Welcome, survivor. If you're hearing this, it means you made it at least this far. The world outside is gone. Cities have fallen, governments disappeared, and the dead now walk the earth. But somehow, I survived. In this story, I'm going to share with you how I survived the first 365 days of the zombie apocalypse hidden deep inside an abandoned Cold War bunker. No rescue, no contact with the outside world. Just darkness, silence, and the constant fear that something might already be inside with me. Food was limited, power was unstable, and every single day brought a new challenge that could have been my last. So sit back, stay quiet, and listen carefully. Because this is the story of how I survived 365 days in a Cold War bunker during the zombie apocalypse. But before the bunker, before the silence, before the endless days underground, everything had to fall apart first. This is how it all began. Day 1. The world didn't end with an explosion. It ended with sirens. I was driving home late in the evening when the emergency alarms started echoing across the entire city. At first I thought it was just another routine test, the kind nobody really pays attention to anymore. But something felt wrong. Cars began stopping in the middle of the street. People came out of shops and looked around nervously. Within seconds every phone around me started buzzing with the same emergency alert. Unknown biological threat detected. Seek shelter immediately. At first, people laughed. A biological threat? It sounded ridiculous. Maybe a virus outbreak or some government drill. Then I saw the first attack. A man stumbled across the street, covered in blood. Two strangers ran toward him, trying to help. The moment they touched him, he bit one of them straight in the neck. Panic exploded instantly. People started screaming and running in every direction. I slammed my car into reverse and turned around as fast as I could. But the worst part wasn't the attack. It was what happened next. The man who had been bitten stood up again. Slowly. His eyes were empty. And then he started attacking everyone around him. The radio stations suddenly cut into emergency broadcasts. Reports were coming in from everywhere. Hospitals, airports, police stations. Violence. Chaos. People turning on each other. Within an hour the highways were completely blocked. Thousands of cars abandoned. Everyone trying to escape. That's when I remembered something my grandfather once told me. About an old Cold War bunker hidden deep in the forest, about 20 kilometers outside the city. A place built in the 1960s, in case nuclear war ever came. Everyone forgot about it, but I didn't. So I turned off the main road and drove straight into the dark forest. And that decision probably saved my life. Day 2. When I finally reached the bunker, the sun was already disappearing behind the forest. The sky had turned dark red, and the road behind me was completely empty. Too empty. The bunker entrance was exactly where my grandfather once described it. Hidden behind thick trees and old concrete walls covered in moss. If you didn't know it was there, you would walk right past it. A massive steel door stood in front of me. Rust covered most of it, but the handle was still intact. For a moment I just stood there, listening to the forest around me. The wind moved slowly through the trees, and somewhere far away I could hear distant screams echoing from the direction of the city. Whatever was happening, it was spreading fast. I grabbed the heavy metal handle and pulled. At first it didn't move. Then suddenly the door groaned loudly and slowly opened inward, releasing a cloud of dust that smelled like metal and old concrete. The bunker had been sealed for decades. I stepped inside. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a narrow concrete corridor that disappeared deep underground. Old warning signs were still hanging on the walls. Emergency shelter. Authorized personnel only. Every step echoed through the silent bunker. I didn't know what I would find down there. Maybe nothing. Maybe something worse. After walking down the stairs for almost a minute, the corridor opened into a large underground room. And that's when I realized something incredible. The bunker was still stocked. Rows of dusty metal shelves were filled with old canned food. Large water tanks stood against the wall. There were bunk beds, medical boxes, and even an old diesel generator. Someone had prepared this place to survive a nuclear war, which meant I might be able to survive here too. But there was one problem. The bunker door. If anything followed me into the forest, it could find this place. So I went back up the stairs and pushed the massive steel door closed with all my strength. The metal slammed shut with a deep echo that rolled through the bunker. Then I locked it from the inside. For the first time since the sirens started, I allowed myself to breathe. I was safe. Or at least, I thought I was. Because later that night, while I was sitting in the darkness listening to the wind outside, I heard something. A faint scratching sound, coming from the ventilation shaft above me. Day 5. The scratching sound didn't stop. At first I thought it was just the wind moving through the old ventilation pipes. This bunker was more than 50 years old after all. Metal expands, pipes shift, and old buildings make strange noises. But this was different. It was slow, deliberate. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I aimed my flashlight toward the ventilation shaft in the ceiling. The metal cover was still bolted in place, but the sound was definitely coming from above it. Something was moving in the ventilation tunnels. My heart started racing. The bunker had been sealed for decades. There shouldn't have been anything alive inside the ventilation system. Unless something had crawled in from the outside. I grabbed one of the old tools I had found earlier, a heavy steel wrench, and slowly stepped onto a chair so I could reach the vent cover. The scratching stopped. Complete silence filled the bunker. For a moment I just stood there, listening. Nothing. Maybe it really was just an old pipe shifting. But just as I started to relax, bang! Something slammed hard against the other side of the ventilation shaft. I jumped down from the chair and nearly dropped my flashlight. The metal vent rattled violently for a second before going completely still again. My breathing became heavy. Whatever was in there, it wasn't small. I didn't wait to find out. I ran to the storage room and started looking for anything that could block the ventilation opening. Within minutes I had dragged a heavy metal cabinet underneath it and pushed it tight against the wall. If something tried to break through, it would have to move that cabinet first. That night I barely slept. Every small sound echoed through the bunker like thunder. Pipes creaked, metal groaned, and somewhere far above me, I could hear faint noises drifting down through the ventilation tunnels. The world outside had fallen into chaos. But inside the bunker, something else might already be waking up. Day 5 completed. Day 12. The bunker had been quiet for days. Too quiet. I had started settling into a routine. Every morning I checked the generator, counted the food supplies, and walked through every corridor of the bunker just to make sure nothing had changed. The place was bigger than I first thought. There were storage rooms, sleeping quarters, an old control room filled with dusty equipment, and several heavy steel doors that led deeper underground. Most of them were locked, probably sealed decades ago. But today something felt different. While I was checking the water tanks, I heard a sound from above. A distant thud. Then another. At first I thought it might be thunder, but then it happened again. Thud, thud, footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps. My entire body froze. Someone, or something, was walking above the bunker. Carefully, I turned off the generator lights and grabbed my flashlight. The bunker fell into near darkness, lit only by the dim beam in my hand. I slowly climbed the staircase that led toward the entrance door. With every step, the sounds above became clearer. Scraping, shuffling, and then, a low, horrible groaning sound. My stomach dropped. Zombies. They were outside. I moved closer to the thick steel entrance door and pressed my ear against the cold metal. More sounds now. Not just one. Several. Something slammed weakly against the door. Then another body hit it. Thump. The door held easily. It had been designed to survive nuclear blasts, but hearing them so close sent chills down my spine. The infection had already spread into the forests, which meant the cities were probably completely lost. For the next hour I sat in silence, listening. Sometimes they scratched at the concrete walls. Sometimes they wandered away, but every so often, one of them would slam against the bunker door again. They didn't know I was inside. Not yet. But that night, while I was returning to the main room, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The ventilation system. The metal cabinet I had pushed under the vent had moved slightly. Just a few centimeters, but enough to prove something terrible. Whatever had slammed the ventilation shaft earlier was still trying to get inside. Day 12 completed. Day 20. I hadn't slept properly in days. Every noise, every groan from the forest outside, kept me on edge. I had barricaded the ventilation shaft as best as I could, but deep down I knew it wouldn't hold forever. That night, while I was checking the food supplies, a loud clang echoed from the vent. My heart stopped. Slow, deliberate scraping sounds followed. The metal cabinet I had pushed against the vent was now dented. Something was forcing its way through. I grabbed my wrench and flashlight, shining the beam up at the vent. My stomach churned when I saw the first small claw mark on the metal. Whoever, or whatever, was up there had grown stronger. Panic rose, but I forced myself to think. The bunker had multiple heavy doors, storage rooms, and emergency hatches. I needed a plan. I spent the next hour reinforcing the vent with old shelving units and any heavy objects I could find. My arms ached, but I knew it was my only chance. Just when I thought I was done, a low, guttural groan reverberated through the shaft. The sound wasn't human. It wasn't fully zombie either. It was something in between, smarter, more persistent. I retreated to the main room, sitting against the wall, breathing heavily. Every second that vent stayed under attack, I felt closer to being trapped. And then I remembered the old radio equipment in the control room. Maybe, just maybe, someone else had survived. Someone who could warn me about what was happening outside. I switched on the dusty radio. Static filled the room. I adjusted the dials carefully, scanning frequencies. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then, faintly, almost impossibly, I heard it. A crackling voice, distorted but alive. Bunker. Survivors. Coordinates. North. Help. My heart leapt. Another survivor. Somewhere out there, someone was alive. But could I trust them? Or was this a trap, maybe even a lure for the infected? I switched the radio off. My mind raced. I had survived the first 20 days, but whatever was outside, whatever was clawing at the vent, was just the beginning. Day 20 completed. Day 30. For weeks, I had been exploring the bunker, mapping every corridor, checking every storage room, and reinforcing the entrances. But today, I discovered something I hadn't noticed before. A heavy steel door, deeper underground, partially hidden behind old crates and rusted machinery. It was locked, but unlike the others, it had strange markings etched into the metal, numbers, letters, and symbols that looked almost like a warning. My curiosity got the better of me. I cleared the crates and tried the handle. Locked tight. But old bunkers have weaknesses if you look closely. After almost an hour of prying and hammering, the lock finally gave way with a loud clang that echoed through the tunnels. I pushed the door open slowly, holding my flashlight like a weapon. Dust and mold hit me first, making me cough, but I could make out the room's contents. Shelves filled with old military equipment. Gas masks, ammunition, canned food older than I was. But the strangest thing was a small metal cabinet in the corner, bolted to the floor. On it was a faded note. Do not open until safe. Containment breach protocol activated. My stomach twisted. A containment breach. I glanced back at the door I had just forced open. Was this bunker designed only to survive a nuclear war, or something else? Suddenly, a loud thump reverberated from above. Not the vent this time, closer. The bunker entrance. Something, or many things, were outside. Moving, testing the door, scraping, pounding. I realized with horror. The zombies had discovered the bunker. Every instinct screamed at me to hide, but I couldn't. I was now in a part of the bunker I had never been. Every step forward was a risk. Every sound could mean death. I grabbed a few gas masks and flashlights, barricaded the new room the best I could, and braced myself for the night. And for the first time, I realized, surviving underground for 30 days wasn't enough. The real challenge had just begun. Day 30 completed. Day 60. Life in the bunker had become routine, almost eerily normal. I had food, water, and a place to sleep, but the constant fear never left me. Every distant groan, every scraping sound reminded me that the world outside was gone. The ventilation shaft was still reinforced, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had tried to get in weeks ago was still lurking. Today, while checking the generators, I heard a louder than usual bang from the bunker entrance. Someone, or something, was trying harder. They had learned. I peeked through a small security hatch near the main door. Shadows moved. Too many to count. The infected had surrounded the bunker. They were patient. They weren't leaving. I realized then that hiding wouldn't be enough anymore. I needed a plan. I remembered the old radio signal I had heard weeks ago. If another survivor was really out there, maybe they could help me. I ran to the control room and started scanning frequencies. Static. And then, a faint voice. If you're alive, do not open the main doors. Danger. Containment breached. The transmission cut out. My heart sank. Containment breached. The note I had found in the locked room months ago wasn't a warning, it was a prophecy. Whatever was in the bunker, or coming for it, was no longer human. I spent the night preparing, reinforcing every corridor, barricading every entrance, and organizing the supplies. One thing was clear. Surviving 60 days underground had been possible, but the next 300 would push me to the very edge of sanity. Day 60 completed. Day 100. 100 days underground. 100 days of silence, fear, and constant vigilance. The bunker had become my world. A cold, concrete cage, but the real danger wasn't just outside anymore. The scratching in the ventilation shafts had returned, louder and more deliberate than ever. I had reinforced it months ago, but now the metal groaned under the pressure. Whatever was in there had grown stronger, smarter. Then came the main door. The thumps outside weren't just random, they were coordinated. I pressed my ear against the steel and could hear them moving in unison, almost as if they were testing my defenses. I grabbed a flashlight and my wrench, then carefully checked every corridor. Every storage room, every locked door, every emergency hatch, all intact. But my stomach told me that this time, it wasn't just the infected. Something else had followed me in. Later that night, as I was trying to sleep on one of the dusty bunk beds, a faint metallic scraping echoed through the ventilation. My heart raced. Slowly, I got up and aimed my flashlight toward the source. A shadow moved. Something was inside the vent. Something alive, something that didn't belong there. Panic surged, but I forced myself to stay calm. I barricaded the vent with heavier shelves, bolted doors, and stacked crates. Then I sat in the darkness, waiting, listening. The radio crackled again. Static. Then a voice, more distorted this time. Survivor. Bunker. Containment failed. Do not trust the system. The transmission cut abruptly. My mind reeled. Containment failed. The note, the radio, the sounds in the vent, they weren't warnings anymore. They were signs. Signs that the real fight wasn't outside, it was inside. And somewhere in the darkness, whatever had breached the ventilation was watching, waiting. Day 100 completed. Day 150. Half a year underground. 150 days of isolation, fear, and endless waiting. Every sound was amplified. The groan of the metal walls, the distant echo of something moving in the tunnels, the faint scratching in the ventilation shafts. Tonight, the scraping returned, louder than ever. The cabinet I had reinforced had shifted slightly. Whatever was inside the vent had learned, adapted, and grown stronger. Then came a pounding from the main entrance. Not random, precise, coordinated. The infected were no longer just wandering. They were testing my defenses, searching for weaknesses. I grabbed my flashlight and wrench, checking every corridor. Everything seemed intact, but the unease in my stomach told me the real danger was no longer outside. I returned to the control room and turned on the old radio equipment. Static. And then a faint, crackling voice. If you're alive, do not open the main doors. Survivor. Coordinates north. Danger. The signal cut off abruptly. Someone else had survived. Or maybe it was a trap. Either way, I knew I had to prepare. I barricaded all entrances, reinforced the ventilation shafts, and stocked the food supply. I even found a few old night vision goggles in the deeper storage rooms. As I sat against the wall, flashlight in hand, I realized the bunker had changed. It wasn't just a shelter anymore, it was a battlefield. And whatever was outside, and whatever was inside the ventilation, it wasn't going to wait forever. Day 150 completed. Day 200. 200 days underground. Every corner of the bunker I once trusted now felt like a potential trap. The walls echoed too loudly, the air felt heavier, and every distant sound made my heart race. The vent had been reinforced, but tonight it rattled violently. Whatever had been trying to get in all these months was now relentless. I bolted the cabinet as tightly as possible, but each metallic scrape reminded me that it was only a matter of time before it broke through. Then came the main doors. Heavy thumps echoed through the steel. This time they were stronger, louder, too coordinated to be random. Whoever, or whatever, was outside had learned patience and precision. I grabbed my wrench and flashlight and patrolled every corridor I could. The storage rooms, the sleeping quarters, the old control room, all intact. But the unease told me I wasn't alone anymore. Something was moving with intelligence. Suddenly, the radio crackled. Static. Then a distorted voice. Survivor. Containment failed. North exit. Do not trust anyone. The message cut off again. The note I had found months ago. The first warnings on the locked deep room. It was all coming true. I reinforced the deepest corridor doors with crates and metal shelving, barricaded the main entrance, and prepared a safe room in case something made it past the vent. Every heartbeat was a countdown. That night, while sitting in darkness, I heard it, a low, guttural growl from the vent. And then, faint footsteps, coming from deeper inside the bunker. Whatever had survived, or followed me, was no longer just outside. Day 200 completed. Day 300. 300 days underground. 300 days of isolation, fear, and survival. The bunker, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cage closing in. Every corridor echoed with ominous sounds. Every shadow could hide death. The ventilation shafts rattled constantly, as if whatever had been trying to get in all these months had grown smarter, hungrier, unstoppable. Then the worst happened. The main doors shuddered violently under repeated pounding. The infected, or something worse, were no longer just testing. They were breaking in. I ran through the bunker, checking barricades, pushing crates against doors, and reinforcing everything I could. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be enough. Then the radio crackled one last time. Static first, then a voice, distorted and urgent. Bunker compromised. Containment failed. Exit north. Danger. Do not trust anyone. The transmission ended abruptly. I realized that the warnings, the notes, the strange sounds in the vent, had all been building to this moment. The bunker was no longer a refuge. Survival meant fighting. Every second, every breath. That night, while sitting in my makeshift safe room, I could hear the scraping and growling closer than ever. The vent had been breached slightly. Something was inside, and the pounding at the entrance never stopped. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Day 365. 1 year underground. 365 days of isolation, fear, and constant vigilance. Every sound, every shadow, every distant groan had tested my sanity. The bunker that once felt like a refuge was now a battlefield. The ventilation shafts had been breached weeks ago, and I had reinforced every corridor, barricaded every door, but nothing could stop what was coming. The pounding at the main entrance grew louder, relentless. The infected had learned patience, coordination, and cunning. They were no longer just wandering, they were hunting. I grabbed my flashlight, wrench, and a few makeshift weapons. My heart pounded like a drum. Every second counted. Every movement could mean life, or death. Then the radio crackled one last time. Static. Then a voice, faint but clear. Survivor. Do not open the doors. North exit. Hope remains. The message cut off abruptly. Hope. That was all I had left. Hours passed. Scraping. Growling. Pounding. Constant. I stayed in the deepest safe room I could find, barricading myself further, listening, waiting. Then, silence. For a moment, my chest relaxed. But I knew better. I moved carefully toward the main corridor. The air was heavy. The bunker smelled of metal, dust, and decay. And there, in the flickering beam of my flashlight, I saw them. Shadows moving. Some crawling, some standing, malformed, intelligent, terrifying. I backed away slowly, heart racing, flashlight shaking. My wrench felt heavy in my hands. I realized the truth. Surviving wasn't about hiding. It was about enduring, adapting, and being smarter than whatever hunted me. I took a deep breath. 1 year. I had made it this far. And somehow, I was still alive. I stepped forward, ready for whatever came next. Day 365 completed. And to anyone listening, if you survived the world outside, remember this. Stay vigilant, stay alive, and never, ever underestimate the darkness. Thanks for surviving this story with me. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more crazy survival adventures. Comment below how you would survive a year in a bunker during the zombie apocalypse. Stay safe, survivors.